Okay, hello everyone. So we're 10 past, so welcome to ULAB lecture 12 slash LaTeX workshop number 2. So as a quick reminder to the ULAB mentees, there's once again a checkoff today on B courses. It should be published at the moment. Beyond that, thank you for showing up to the second part of our LaTeX workshop. I know last week we held it during peak midterm season, and this week is also quite crazy. So thank you everyone for showing up. I hope you're doing well, staying sane in these interesting times. And so with that, I'll hand the floor over to Samantha.
Thanks, Yi, and good to see you all again. I'm sure you have other things in your mind tonight, but hopefully an hour or so of LaTeX will help provide a nice distraction. For those of you who maybe weren't here last time, I'm going to put this in the chat again. There's a link to our GitHub repository and details about setting up your account in Overleaf. So again, if you weren't here last time, you need to have an account in Overleaf. That's the program we're going to use to work on LaTeX together, and set that up with your berkeley.edu email, and that will give you more sharing privileges, more storage, and a few other pro features. My name is Sam Teplitsky. I'm one of the librarians in the Engineering and Physical Sciences division. And normally I sit in the physics library, but now I sit at home. I'm happy to answer questions throughout if you want to put stuff in the chat. And if some of the helpers can monitor the chat too, that would be great. And also if things come up after the session, as you're using Overleaf, feel free to email. I'll pop my email in the chat too before I forget. All right, let me start sharing my screen. Okay, so we're going to talk about two things today, bibliographies. So that's how you create a list of references within a report or document, and tables and figures. For the bibliographies, I'm going to talk a little bit through the slides, and then we'll do a live demo together. And then for tables and figures, we'll go into a breakout room and you can work on exercises there. I wanted to start by just dispelling a little bit of mystery around some of the jargon with bibliographies. You may have heard some terms before, and that kind of sticks in people's minds is how bibliographies work for LaTeX. So you may have heard something called something called the .bib file. People often say like, oh, put in your .bib file or sync up your .bib file, something like that. So the .bib is the appendix or the suffix to the file you use to create your bibliographies, and that's where you will store your references. In the last session, we created a project together, and we'll use that project again. So you can open that up if you haven't already. So you'll want to go to Overleaf and hold on a second. Strange. What are you all seeing of my screen? Are you seeing the GitHub repository right now? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Oh, there we go. That was like a weird delay thing. Okay, so here's my document that I started on last time. And yeah, take a moment to open that up. So when you go to Overleaf, you will see a list of your projects. And if you haven't touched this since last week, it's probably your first project. On the left pane, you'll see that all you should have right now is the main document that you were working on. When we start working on the bibliography, we're going to add something there. So I'm going to close that just because the view is weird for sharing, but that's where that hangs out. Okay, so the .bib file is where you store your references. The other terminology you may have heard before is something called BibTeX. Um, I'm going to kind of explain why we're doing what we're doing now. And this is something you can look up later. You might find that things work differently for projects you're doing or templates you're using. But I think for people starting from scratch, this is kind of the way to go. So, so yeah, you may have heard of BibTeX before. BibTeX is kind of the default option for formatting references in LaTeX. And it works with, last time we talked about packages, it works with a package called natbib. The reason I have the line across to that is because we are not going to use that today. natbib is no longer being updated. So again, if you're starting from scratch, I don't think it's worth starting there. Instead, we're going to use biblatex, a different package. And this is kind of the one that is being updated now. It has a flexible interface. It handles language a bit better. And biblatex works with a parser called bibber. And that's the interface between that file you're going to create and your document that'll help sync the two and render everything in your document. Overleaf has amazing help pages and FAQs, so you could read more about it if you're kind of wondering why we're doing one and not the other. But I just wanted you to hear those terms in case you've heard them before and we're like, why are we doing that, or that doesn't make sense. For the folks just joining, we're starting today talking about bibliographies. We haven't done much yet, but if you are just joining, open up that Overleaf project that you started on last time. I'm getting a breakout room thing. We shouldn't be getting that yet, right? Okay. Once we start the creating that .bib file, we're going to have an entry for each reference that we're going to add. So this is kind of what the entry looks like. If you're familiar with databases, this is kind of what this is. So the first line in the entry is the key. That's that Draken 2016. It'll lead you to that paper. And then there's various other information that you need in your bibliography: title, author, journal. You can kind of populate these .bib files automatically, but the thing you need to realize is that if your stuff is incomplete here, it'll be incomplete in your bibliography. Yeah. Okay. So in Overleaf, there are 3 ways to deal with bibliographies. What we're going to do tonight is that first bullet point. We're going to create and upload our own file. Another way to deal with it is to host that file somewhere else and then to just sync it with a URL. And then the third way is if you use Mendeley or Zotero, which is a way of managing your bibliographic citations, you can sync those. There are advantages to that. If you're working on group projects, that can be really helpful. But I thought it would be good to kind of go bare bones today so you can see how the whole thing works together. Okay, so let's dig into this together. We're going to go through these 3 steps, which are also part of the first exercise. So again, have your project open, have the link to the exercises open, which is in that GitHub repository. And we are going to be starting, we left off last time in exercise 2, we're going to be starting in exercise 3. So within that project, you want to make sure and open up this side pane here. So you should have 3 different columns. You can adjust them for your own view on your machine. In that left-hand column, you will click on that document paper icon and create a new file. You can name it whatever you want. It's easy to call it something representative. So I'm going to call mine references.bib. Make sure it has the .bib there. And you can see those other choices I was talking about. If you had a .bib file elsewhere, you could upload it. You could sync from one of these other database websites as well. So now you'll see I have two things here. And as you get a project going, you might have multiple files on the side. So if we click over there, you'll see this is just an um, empty page, right? Um, can I get just a quick thumbs up from folks? Are you all at this stage? So you could use the reactions there, or yeah, give a live thumbs up, whatever works for you. Uh-oh, I see a thumbs down. All right, let me pause for a second then, because I'm not seeing a ton of responses. So you'll go, you're in Overleaf. You can go to that project you used last week. If you weren't here last week, you can open a new project. The default will be that main.tech page. You'll click on this paper icon and create a new file, and then name it something along the lines of references.bib, and then you'll have a blank page here. You can also follow along. If one of the helpers could put these links back in the chat for me, that would be great. Follow along on the exercise. This is 3.1. So we've created this new file together. We've named it. And now we're going to search for 3 articles, or one book and 2 articles that we're going to populate in that file. And there are many ways to do this, but I kind of wanted to show you a quick and easy way so that you don't have to go into databases. You don't have to create that .bib entry from scratch. You can just cut and paste in Google Scholar. So what you'll do is you'll go over to Google Scholar and hold on one sec. And you'll put each of those in there. So that you'll copy and paste that first, it's called the DOI, which is an identifier, and you'll put that in Google Scholar. So the 10.116-science, blah, 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 and you'll put that in Google Scholar. And what you're going to see, one sec. You'll see a link to this article about Ohm's law. And you're going to click on these quote symbols. And it gives you a couple of ways to cite the article. Normally, if you were just like working in a Google Doc, you could cut and paste one of these. But tonight we're going to click over to the BibTech and cut and paste all of that. So you see what I was talking about earlier. You have the key, which is that top line, the at article Weber 2012. You're going to cut and paste that. And sorry, go over to the references.bib file and put that there. And you'll do that for each of those 3. And again, make sure you're in the references file, not the main file. So let's just take a minute and go through each of those and get that in there. So again, you're going to look it up in Google Scholar. So that second one is hydraulic power system analysis. And this is a book. We're going to click on the quotes. We're going to click on the BibTech. We're going to cut and paste it and add that to the references file. All right, I'll let you work through those. Let me move my stuff around a second because I'm not seeing the chat. If you're having any problems, feel free to pop them in the chat. So again, you're taking one of those three things from exercise 3.1, you're putting them in Google Scholar. Yeah, I will do that. So you'll go to scholar.google.com. Let me put that in there in case you haven't used it before. Oh, I reversed it. That'll probably get you there, but it should be scholar.google. Sorry about that. So this is that first article. You could get to the full article, but you don't need to. You'll click on the quotes. Initially, you see just conventional citations. Again, that's what you would do if you were just cut and pasting into a Google Doc, but you want the .bib style formatting, and you'll just cut and paste all of that. So I'm going to copy it, and then you cut and paste it back into that .bib. So at the end, you should have three things in here. So let me do the last one. And these numbers for the two articles are called DOIs, which are sort of like Social Security numbers, identifiers for academic articles. It can be useful to use this if an article has a really similar title to another one. So I probably should have given you the titles as well so you could verify. But anyway, here's the article. Again, you see that same construction. So you have the article key at the top, you have a title, an author, journal. If something's missing here, it's sort of on you to fill it out. Otherwise, it's not going to appear in your bibliography. Okay, so I have three in there. Hopefully you have at least one because you'll need that to work on the next bit. I'm going to click back over to my main document, and nothing will have changed because I haven't done any of the other stuff I need to do. So let me click over to the exercise. So we've done all of this first part. The next thing we need to do is add a package. I talked before about BibLaTeX. We're going to add that. We're going to put Bibber as the back end, and we're going to use a style that's just a simple author year style. For whatever work you do for your classes, or if you're writing or helping with an article, there might be a template you use that determines the style. So these two lines you'll need in the preamble. And remember, the preamble is everything that appears. I'm going to close this just so I have more real estate here. The preamble is everything that appears before the begin document. So I am going to add the term use package. In this case, it's a square brackets for Bibber. I'm going to determine the style, author year, and the package itself is called BibLaTeX. So I'm getting an error, and that's totally fine. I'm going to just keep going. And then I'm going to add the actual file so that it knows what file I am using. And that's the references.bib that we've been working in. So you should have those two lines in there. Again, this is in the preamble. So this is before the begin document, I prefer to have the packages together. I don't think it actually matters what order they're in, but it's just easier to have them towards the top. So you'll have these 2 lines added. And normally, where does a bibliography appear? You have it at the end. So I've added some dummy text in mine just to make it seem like I've got more going on. But you'll see at the end of my document, there's no bibliography. So there is one more step, and that's towards the end of 3.2. You need to actually tell it to print your bibliography. So you'll see that I have an error. I'm still not getting the bibliography. Does anyone know why? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat if you have a sense of why you're not seeing the bibliography still. Well, there's another detail you need to account for. We haven't cited anything, and the words like to actually cite something means that you're referencing it within your document. So in order to show the bibliography, you have to have cited things. But there's a workaround, and that's that next line in the exercise, and you can do the command no cite. So that means anything in your .bib file, even the stuff that you haven't cited. And then this should do it for us. Great, let me just make this side bigger. So then you can see I have the bibliography at the bottom, and I've got those 3 references. It's got the author year format. It does all of the formatting for you. It makes sure that the book is like a book where the title is italicized and the articles are represented like articles. Does anyone have any questions? So like we talked about last week, there's often many ways of accomplishing something with LaTeX. Yeah, the packages, if you go to the GitHub exercise page, I can put that back in the chat. The packages are in 3.2. There's more than one way to accomplish things. So you might find when you get off on your own that there are other options, other packages and stuff you can use, but this is one way to do it. And this, again, depended on you creating that .bib file and then making sure that you brought it into the main document and then used the command to quote print it and had the no cite in order to make it show. So the other option is to actually have your citations in the text, and that's what the next part of the exercise is. So I am going to comment out the no cite so we can see this at work. So if you scroll down a bit to 3.3, you can type some version of this sentence if you want, or whatever works for you. And we're going to use, there are 2 commands there. So we're going to use, you can try out either one of those. And remember, this sort of auto-populates or auto-suggests. And the nice thing is when you use the cite command, oops, you can see that your 3 citations show up as an option. So you don't necessarily have to click over to remind yourself like, oh, what was the name of that author? You'll see what the choices are. So I'm going to let that auto complete for me. And then I'm going to try the other command just to see how that looks. And there's the other citation I'm going to use, contradicts this. Oops. And remember, so before I needed the no cite command to make things appear because I hadn't cited anything, but now I've cited 2 articles within my text. And by doing that, they appear below where I've done the print bibliography. So there are 2 commands that you need to write in the text, and those are in that exercise. It's cite, or the other example I gave you is cite author. And depending on which one you use, you can see in the text that it renders them differently. So it will render according to the style you've put in the preamble. In the case of the plain cite command, it includes the date because that's what the style asks it to do. And then in the other case, it just has their names. Any other questions? So it's kind of a multi-part process. You've sought out your references from, in this case, I gave them to you, but you would have them from somewhere, something you read or something you were supposed to include. You've added them to that .bib file. You've called in the .bib file at the top in the preamble, and then you've added some text and cited the articles within it. Some people find it useful to have one .bib file per project. So it would be like everything related to this assignment or your thesis or whatever you're working on. Some people have one enormous one with thousands and thousands of things, but you can see it would get a little hard to figure out and remember things as you're kind of typing and trying to figure out what author wrote what and what's relevant to your text. Sorry, I didn't actually hit return there in the chat. Okay, let's move on. So that's bibliographies. We can return if you have questions later on. So we talked about that. The other thing we're going to talk about tonight is how to do tables and figures. And I think this brings out some of the really interesting features that Overleaf and LaTeX make available to you. So just like with the other things we've been doing, requires another package. In this case, it's the tabular X package for tables. So we'll add that into the preamble when we get started on the exercise. Tables, if you've done any markdown, there's some similarity there with the table commands. You'll see in the next slide how this comes together, but just to go over it quickly, the commands are L, R, and C for left, right, and center within a column. You could also align according to SI units, so that means you'll align according to the decimal if you have numbers. You use an ampersand to separate columns. You use that double backslash to start a new row. You can do the slash horizontal line to do a horizontal line like under a header, and then a pipe for a vertical. So this is an example where you can see the syntax on the left and then what it looks like on the right. So again, you'll add that package in the preamble before the begin document. The ... is just representing all the stuff in between. And this is, we talked about this last week. This is an environment. So you'll need that begin and end. And it may seem a little redundant to do it this way. You'll see I have begin table and then begin tabular. And we'll get to this a little later, but the reason that I do it this way is it allows you to have more control over the placement of your table within your text. So you might want to finish a paragraph and have the table drift down to another page or align it somehow. So by having it within the table environment and the tabular environment, you can do that. Okay, so You have the tabular environment, sorry. Um, the L represents that column on the left. It's left aligned, so that item, widget, gadget is all aligned to the left. The second column is a C. It's all centered. Then you have that determines the whole thing for the columns going all the way down the table. You have the item and quantity, and then the backslashes are the new line. The H line is that line for the header, and then a line for each of those entries. The ampersand separates the two columns, like into two cells. So these principles apply for a basic table like this, and you can imagine how you might do borders, vertical lines with the pipe, and make things a lot more complicated, add color, all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the basics on tables. You'll get more into it in the exercise in a few minutes. Um, I'll talk briefly about figures now. So there are ways to create figures and in terms of like graphs or plots within Overleaf. I recommend doing it in whatever program you use and then uploading it separately. You can host your figures somewhere and sync them. So you could host them in GitHub or Dropbox and sync them so that when you're making your plots, they would be automatically updated. But as a basic way of dealing with it, just uploading an image is probably the simplest thing to do. So the same way we started a new file, but added a new file before, you can upload or sync to an image from your computer. In this, I have an image for you in the repository if you want to use a picture of my cat. That's the keyboard cat. And you basically download it and then upload it, and it'll appear in that left-hand column where your bibliography is. Again, I think this is a lot simpler than creating charts and graphs and plots and stuff within Overleaf. I think it's just better to use the native program that you're using and then export it and import it into here. Figures, and again, another package. So we'll add this graphics package to the beginning. And then otherwise the syntax is fairly simple. You have the backslash and the phrase include graphics, and then you can manipulate it a little bit according to the width of the text block and how big you want the image to appear. And then the last thing I want to mention before we get into the exercises is what I talked briefly about are floats and figure and table placement. So there are a few specifiers that you can play around within the exercise that help you, in a way, fight against LaTeX to say, like, this is where I want my thing. Because otherwise, and you'll find this out today because you don't really have much text in your document yet. So it might not appear exactly where you want it to be. So these specifiers let you say, like, put this table at the top of the page with a T, or position this at the bottom of the page, or with an exclamation point, override this parameter where LaTeX is saying my image should go. You can also, use the float package and then the specifier, the capital H, to position things where you want them. This may seem a little abstract right now, but you'll see as you start putting the tables and figures in, they sort of move around in a weird way, and floats can help you overcome that. All right, so in the last, we'll spend maybe 10, 12 minutes or so in the breakout rooms working on the exercise 4. So still be in your project and then scroll down on the exercise page. You will create a table with a header row, bunch of columns, caption it. There's a challenge table if you want to get something more complicated and deal with some alternating colors and some merged cells and stuff. And then you'll experiment with uploading a figure and placing the figure. Does anyone have any questions before we head into the rooms? Oh, I did forget to mention, for those of you who were not here last time, the rest of you should remember, when you're in the room, you can share your document by You can share your document with the helper in your room. You can chat them a link to your document by pressing on that people thing. You can switch down to read only. Oh, where am I? Sorry. You'll turn on the link sharing and just give people view access. You don't need to give them edit access, and that'll help let the helpers troubleshoot if you're encountering any errors in the document. Okay, should we head into the rooms?
Okay, so like last time, you guys are free to choose whichever room you want. There's about 40 people, so ideally about 8 people per room. And if you're having trouble entering one of the rooms yourselves, just hang back and we'll assign you manually.
Seems like we're mostly back. We're coming up to the end of the hour. Are there any questions that people had that you want to ask before we break? I'm going to put a feedback survey in the chat. I know some of you filled it out last time. You can fill it out again for this session, or if you didn't fill it out last time, it would be helpful for us to improve the session for next time. And there are a few emails on my last slide. You're welcome to get in touch if you have any questions. And there are 2 other librarians' emails on there too. And then all of this is in the GitHub, as well as, if you didn't notice already, there is an answer key in there. So if you are having some issues getting things to render, you can check out the answer key in the repository. Yi, did you have any last statements?
So as like a closing remark, I wanted to say a very big thank you to Samantha as well as the rest of the library staff for hosting this wonderful workshop, as well as the helpers from SBS, ULAB, and elsewhere who have helped run the breakout rooms. Yeah, I hope you guys have learned something from this workshop. For ULAB, this will help you with your project proposals, and for everyone else with your homeworks and whatnot. And beyond that, hope you stay healthy, stay safe. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank you.